Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 3, harmonizing light and shadow to embody your mystical power and purpose. I'm your host, Washayla Sananda, and today we have our Season 3 opener. I am so excited to share with you the beautiful Ariella Indigo. Welcome, Ariella.
Hey, welcome and hello to all of your amazing listeners. Such an honor to be invited to open this show. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you. And I know many of our watchers probably are already familiar with your work. Nevertheless, I'm going to share a little bit about what you're up to in the world so everyone kind of has a foundation of where you're coming from. Ariella Juno Indigo is a mage, the founder of a 7-figure spiritually based business, and a magical business mentor who since 2015 has successfully been helping new paradigm leaders to align with their highest calling and build businesses around their soul's purpose. Ariella helps driven spiritual entrepreneurs who are here on sacred missions to unlock their abundance codes by creating successful businesses that deliver service impact to the world while catalyzing her clients to create legendary lives full of freedom, meaning, and magic. Ooh, I love that. So I guess and I love that you use the term mage. I love to open up with a little bit about how your origin story for those who aren't familiar with you, and how did you come to be a mage?
Yeah, great question. Okay. So the short version to this, because otherwise we will be here for an hour, is that I basically grew up knowing nothing around this stuff, right? So I grew up in a family who had actually turned their back on religion. Okay, they were brought up as Jehovah Witnesses, and they found that that experience quite troubling. So they were kind of closed down to all forms of spirituality, and gave birth to a daughter who was having very profound experiences with spirit from a young age, right? But nobody could understand what was going on, and certainly nobody could explain what was happening. So from a young age, I've always been very, very aware of spirit and other beings around me, and I was visited from a very young age, but had no context to understand this through. Therefore, I thought that I had a highly overactive imagination. Worst case, I thought that there was something terribly wrong with me. And it was just kind of something that I didn't really know how to speak about, and I didn't know how to really articulate what was happening to me. So it was just kind of pushed away as an overactive imagination. That overactive imagination stayed with me throughout the whole of my life. And I was having more and more of these kind of supernatural experiences. And I developed quite a few neuroses and issues because of that. And going sort of down the doctors and trying to explain what was happening to me, and then being given labels by the mainstream. So lots of different types of reductive labels, which I carried for years as well. So I grew up thinking that there was something wrong with me, and particularly in my teenage years. I was having a lot of panic attacks. I was having problems with agoraphobia, lots of challenges around sort of depression and anxiety, and was really tapping into these other dimensions a lot and receiving a lot of information, sort of overwhelming information, didn't know how to turn it off. So for me, the way that I ended up coping with that, because we all have to cope somehow, is it predominantly through alcohol, right? Predominantly through alcohol in my teenage years, and then particularly from 18 to 29, my drinking really took off, and it was my main and pretty much my only coping mechanism I didn't know how to cope with the way that I was feeling, my emotions, how I was experiencing reality. I just seemed to be on this roller coaster ride that I couldn't get off of. And, you know, it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary at times. So in the meantime, I actually had a very successful career. So I was in corporate. I was in corporate as a high flyer for 16 years. I guess looking back, it was another way of me being able to cope, actually, like going into work, putting on a mask, you know, pretending to be normal, right? And just really focusing on my work meant that I didn't have to deal with my emotions, something which I didn't know how to do. So I had this successful, like, six-figure career in corporate. I suppressed a lot of the sort of more damaging, you know, life experiences that I was having. People didn't know about that in my workplace. I dramatically rock bottomed at age 29 as I went through my Saturn returns. I went into addiction recovery, which was the best decision that I could have made for myself at the time. There wasn't many other choices to really make at that time, to be honest, which was just as well, because it gave me a path to actually connect with my spirituality for the first time. And it gave me a pathway where I could, you know, put down the alcohol so I could start to have a look at what was going on beneath all of this, you know, the troubled emotions and entangled emotions that I had. So that started me off on a very profound and deep self-healing journey. And I tapped into many different healing modalities, I suppose you could say, at that time. Some more mainstream, did a lot of therapy, but some also more alternative, so spiritual and holistic and otherwise. So fast forward to, I was then age 36. I'd done a lot of work on myself at this point. I'd come through a lot of the darker sort of, and I would say that I was somebody who went through that dark night of the soul experience, you know, as part of my ascension journey. So at that point, my ego was actually in a place where it was strong enough, I was confident enough, and I could trust myself enough to be able to start handling my wider reality for the first time. And it was age 36 that I went through this incredible mystical experience, supernatural experience, spiritual awakening, you could call it. I would more call it an activation, because what actually happened to me is I woke up one morning and there were literally 2 6-foot-tall light beings stood in my bedroom. And I've since come to realize that they're off-planetary beings, benevolent beings who had come to wake me up. And I received many messages and downloads. I had a lot of clairvoyant visions at this time. I was shown a version of myself in the future, which blew my mind, because at that point, I thought that I was a purchasing manager in corporate, right? And what I was showing was very, very different. And this became part of my awakening to understand myself as a multidimensional being. I use the term indigo. And that seemed to then start helping me to understand why I had experienced reality the way that I had. Left corporate, spent 2.5 years in a caravan, in a trailer, practically bankrupt, right, as I was going through my transition, and really holding space to understand, well, what is my higher mission? I know there's a purpose for me. And lots of gifts started sort of dropping in. There were some tests, some initiations that I went through. And then my mission really took off in about 4 years ago now, so 2017. And since then, you know, I've been serving globally, and I'm helping people to remember who they are and to return really home to who they are. So I'm an Ascension way shower, I'm a master oracle, as well as a spiritual business mentor. The spiritual business mentor part came really after becoming an Ascension way shower, because I realized that to help the high frequency souls that we have on this planet, many of whom will be watching this now, to really connect and ground their missions, there needed to be a physical component, as well as the energetic support that many starseeds and high frequency souls have. So I just see it that I'm here to help catalyze people's missions, you know, as they can become who they really are.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that. There were some pieces in there that I wasn't aware of. And one of my questions was, how did you, because I know you've made that shift fairly recently, at least from my perspective, from being more of the Ascension, spiritual, to the business mentorships. And I think that is so powerful and important for people at this time to step into your purpose work. And particularly while much of the world's losing their 9-to-5 jobs. Many of those have gone away in the last year. And so there's a greater opportunity for people to step into their personal power and purpose through creating a business, if that's your mission.
Yeah, that's right. We certainly can't rely on the old structures, the old systems. You know, it's rare now, right? And it's been rare for quite a while that you can just join a large company and stay there for the rest of your life and get your pension. You know, that's been shifting for quite a long time. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2020, didn't that shake things up for all of us, right? And I really do believe that it is the dawning of the new paradigm. It is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And I think 2021 is set to be an absolutely phenomenal, expansive, creative year where there will be lots of new opportunities, some unexpected change for sure as well. And I think we have some more turbulence to go. But yeah, it was part of my deep calling. After serving as an oracle, giving, you know, I've given well over 2,000 readings now to help people understand, you know, what their soul purpose is, what their gifts are. And really just doing the Ascension piece, I realized that a part of myself was unintegrated at that point, because my background is all business, 16 years in corporate. My soul sent me there for a reason. My whole family are successful entrepreneurs. That's happened for a reason, right? And you know, I realized that I needed to reintegrate that part of myself. And I actually love enlightened business. I always have done. You know, and I love new paradigm business and new paradigm marketing and enlightened, you know, all of it is fascinating to me. Money magic, right? It's fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. So, and I just really see that it's a big piece that is missing in the spiritual community. And I really want to support the spiritual community to ground their missions and to make a big impact in the world.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I know there are a lot of people who can very much be helped by that, that service. So thank you for going in that direction and following your truth and your calling, and stepping more powerfully into that business, spiritual business niche where so many people can be served. Something you said as you were opening that I really wanted to dig into a little bit is, you were talking about how, you know, you're really having this dark night of the soul and how you felt so sort of disconnected from what was happening to you as you were growing up. But you said at some point when you felt your ego was strong enough to help you integrate, you know, what you were experiencing. I want to jump in and talk about that because, and you know, the theme of the show is harmonizing light and shadow. And so many people will give the ego a bad name, or say, you know, try and get rid of their ego, try and overcome their ego. And I really love that you said when your ego was strong enough, that's when you were able to process what you'd been experiencing. So will you share a little bit about what you mean by that and your understanding of how the ego can actually help in a situation like that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of spiritual people do definitely struggle with this term, right? And what I also see, and I know from my practice and serving many clients now, is that a lot of the time, the problem that we have as spiritual people is about embodiment, right? It's about embodiment. It's about being here, you know, literally being here as physical beings, right? We're all spiritual souls, but we've chosen to incarnate here in these physical bodies to have this physical experience on the earth plane. And at the moment, until we really do go through the shift, right, and we really do like change significantly physically, and maybe we're not physical anymore, at the moment the ego is part of the deal. Right? It's part of the deal, of course, around having this human experience. So the ego, as with everything else, is nothing to fear. It's nothing to fear. And I think some of the older teachings of spirituality can sometimes add to us distrusting ourselves. And that was certainly a big problem that I had growing up. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself that I would be able to make the right choices for myself and, you know, stay out of trouble, or, you know, I didn't trust myself to look after myself. And that actually created a big rupture, a trauma inside of me, because I didn't have that trust. And that was a big part of my journey. Actually, when I decided to leave, I was in AA for 4.5 years, and I decided to leave that fellowship and trust myself, right, and trust my guidance that I would be able to look after myself. And in fact, my journey took me back into trusting myself with alcohol again. And that was like a major journey and a major decision, which I didn't take lightly. And a lot of my peers within AA were really scared for me. And I was being told, you know, you're going to die, you're going to go insane, which is, you know, which is part of the mindset of when you agree or you subscribe to being an addict, right? Mm-hmm. And I definitely was for a period of time. I definitely was very highly codependent on alcohol. But I guess like this trust, right, which was me trusting my personality, right? Because that's really what the ego is. It's your personality self. I trusted, back then I would have called it God, right? Or I would have called it a higher power. I trusted other people. I trusted my parents. I trusted some close friends, but I didn't actually trust my ego personality to be able to look after myself, because I had all of these stories, right, of when I'd made decisions and it had been disastrous, and you know, there'd been bad things that had happened. So for me, the ego is so important, right? The ego personality is so important, and integrating that ego personality. And I love that this topic is all about, you know, embracing the light and the shadow, because I actually believe that until you do that, you can't ascend, right? You can't ascend. You won't tap into the gifts, right, that I know all of us are wanting to discover within ourselves, like without going through the shadow, without really embracing the shadow. And it's been interesting for me just to see in my own journey that it's when I have authentically not tried to suppress parts of myself that I didn't like or I didn't care for, right? It's when I have accepted all of me, the good, the bad, the ugly, like you talk about, right, on this show. It's when I've accepted that and I've not tried to suppress it. And actually, I've been like all in, and I've just been like, yeah, okay, I'm going to have fun with this. And I'm not going to, you know, I'm not going to overthink this spiritually even, and I'm not going to try and excuse it or use spiritual language to justify any of this. I'm just going to be me. And I've been like as natural as I possibly can be. That's when I've gone through the big stages of my ascension process.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. I mean, I really feel that every time we level up our frequency, or, you know, my coach says new level, new devil. But every time we level up, we experience whatever was in the way of that, whatever shadow stuff was in the way of us being at that higher frequency. It's got to come up because it has to be cleared.
Yeah.
And so I love your working with the ego as this is our personality. You know, our ego is what gives us the drive. And for, you know, for instance, you said, you know, you have all this background in business and entrepreneurship. Why not? That's part of your ego. Why not take that and utilize it to help your ascension process and to help others? That doesn't happen without an ego. We're just, you know, oneness again, but that's not what we came here to be. We came here to be unique. And so I love that you're sharing all of that. And that trust piece is so powerful. The trusting ourselves to even just be the human people that we are, dealing with our mundane stuff. No matter how spiritual we are, they say I think it's the Buddhists say, before enlightenment, chop the wood, carry the water. After enlightenment, chop the wood, carry the water. You still have to go through your day-to-day practices. So thank you for making that real for people, because I think sometimes people get this idea that spiritual teachers and leaders have somehow overcome their human issues. One of my clients said that to me recently. He said, I didn't think that people like you, as in, you know, a teacher, spiritual teacher, had that type of stuff going on. I'm like, well, I haven't done a very good job of being real with you then, because yes, we do.
Totally. And I think, you know, I think there are a couple of spiritual teachers out there who it looks as though they don't have anything going on. I mean, you know, whether they do or not is another story. But I think the vast majority of us definitely do, right? And we admit to that, and I certainly admit to that. And that's not a problem, right? That is not a problem. It's not a problem to me. I mean, I think for me, that day that I'm so enlightened, right, that I never have anything to work through anymore or to transmute, like that's going to be the day where I'm on a different plane of existence, for one, right? I'm probably not going to be on the earth plane anymore. And there's just more that I want to tap into. I want to keep on growing. I want to keep on expanding. I have seen through the journey that I've been on the past like 42 years, the gifts that are available through working through my shadow, right? I mean, you know, just some of the stuff that I have, the person that I have become, the purpose that I have in the world, and some of the gifts that I've picked up along the way, they have come about through going through the shadow. You know, they weren't there to begin with, right? I didn't have access to them, but that's part of the evolutionary journey, you know, that we're all on here on the earth plane. And I just think it's good to keep in our consciousness the perils of spiritual bypassing, actually. And you know, the love and light, you know, the love and light, yeah, absolutely, it is a reality, and we all love and light, and we all want more of it in our lives. But we are living still in this polarity existence, and there is light, there is shadow, there is shade. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's all of you. I mean, there's nothing outside that can hurt you, right? But where there is light, there is also darkness, you know, which can be challenging for some light workers. And sometimes we can think, well, why have I created this situation, or why have I had this bad thing, or attracted this negative relationship, right? Or this negative experience, when all I want to do is, you know, love everybody and just send love and light to everybody. And it's like, yeah, that's the way that the universe is using to send you your opportunities to grow, right? And to not only grow, but to access some of the hidden and latent gifts which you're suppressing because you just want to stay in an illusion of love and light all the time. You know, things move and change on the earth plane, and we go in cycles, and sometimes we go through challenging cycles, you know, but that is so we can unleash, you know, the latent gifts, the hidden gifts, and the light actually that resides inside of us. That's how we access more light and embody more light.
Yes, and keywords there, inside of us and embodiment. Because I think, you know, when people are in that world of, oh, I'm just all love and light, you know, there's this airy fairiness, or this like, I'm out here being all love and light because it's icky in here. I don't want to be in here because I got to deal with all the shadow stuff when I get embodied. So that is an important part of this whole message about it's okay to, you know, to be embodied, and it's what we're looking for. And truly ascension comes from raising the frequency from the inside out, not from hanging out outside the body. So we have, you know, the more of that shadow work that we excavate and integrate and move through, the more embodied we get to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's an important stage of ascension. I mean, it's a really important thing. And I just think it's dangerous. And I don't think I know how dangerous it is to suppress our realities and the way that we're experiencing our realities through our emotions. You know, I spent a long time trying to escape my emotions, and it was disastrous. You know, it was disastrous. So we get to, which can be a challenge still, you know, and it's still a challenge for me today on sometimes, but we get to really embrace all that we are, you know, all that we are and all that we are experiencing, and accept it just for how it is, you know, and learn to love that as well, you know, and learn to love our realities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay to admit that I'm afraid, or whatever that is, when it's up, and face it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about this. On your website, you say you're a protector of the light and teacher of the quantum dark arts defense training, offering empowering and effective ways to clear intrusive energy. So that sounds interesting. What does it mean to be a teacher of quantum dark arts defense training?
It definitely is interesting. Okay, so we're really going to go down the rabbit hole here, which is good with me. So yeah, I mean, I already shared with you, your viewers, that from a young age, I was experiencing different energies all around me and having these visitations. And I think I have seen, I would not say all by any stretch, but I've seen many, many, many different types of beings over the years, all different types, some which have been very extraordinary for my human eyes to witness. And, you know, quite honestly, when I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't have any tools to deal with it, and I didn't know anything about energy mastery, never mind energy management, it was pretty terrifying, you know, very terrifying. And, you know, I would have experiences, my poor ex-boyfriends, because I would have experiences. You're laughing because I know that you
I can totally relate.
You know, I particularly at night, right? Particularly at night, sometimes, and particularly when I was drinking heavily. So I would attract these beings. Sometimes I would have them attach to me as well, and they would speak out of me sometimes at night. So sometimes, and I can laugh at it now, but at the time it was absolutely terrifying. You know, I'd be speaking different languages, right? And I wouldn't consciously, I wouldn't be in my body, right? I'd have been taken over by another energy which would speak different languages out of me. And well, I had a couple of boyfriends who described it. They were like, you know, you're literally speaking fluently in other languages. It sounds either like a Hebrew language, which is interesting because the system that I use now to look at people's soul blueprints is Hebrew. They'd say it either looks like a Hebrew, it sounds like what I imagine would be Hebrew, or it's an alien language, right? And it wouldn't make sense, but it was just these sounds that would come out. So that was pretty freaky, very freaky. And I had a huge fear that I was being possessed, but I couldn't allow myself to consider that that would be real, because that was terrifying, because I had nothing to protect myself around it. So part of when I went through this whole awakening process, and it took years, I mean, actually, like, my soul was very kind to me, because if I had known what I know now when I was in my 20s or possibly even my early 30s, I wouldn't have been able to deal with it. Like, I would not have been able to deal with it. But it is my understanding now that I've been stepped into it, that there are, you know, there are many, many different realms of reality beyond this physical reality. And as an indigo, I suppose you could call it, I've been tapping into these different multidimensional realms. And as a light worker, like many of us, like, I shine quite a big light, a bright light in the cosmos, which attracts different energies to it. And particularly when I wasn't looking after myself, when I was drinking and all of that stuff, I would attract some pretty low frequency energies to me. And by the way, even when you've done your work on yourself and you've cleared up, sometimes you can still attract low frequency energies, not because you're low frequency, but because you're a high frequency and you're actually embodying a lot of light, which comes back to the whole topic of your summit, right? Which is, there has to be this balance of light and darkness. So I went on this extraordinary journey of coming out of denial that other beings existed. And then when I came out of denial, then I was like, right, okay, well, I need to get some tools, right? I need to, like, understand how to deal with this and how to manage my energy, and how to, initially for me, it was about protecting myself, right? And really like claiming sovereignty over my space, because for years I had not, I'd been not really respecting my physical being, right? I hadn't really been respecting my physical body. I hadn't had boundaries in place in many different areas of my life. And that's something that I have come here to master. You know, I know that because I know what's in my soul blueprint now. So it was the perfect sort of lesson for me, just to attract all of these different energies and beings to me, and then learn how to master my energy. And then I've now gone on to teach others how to do that after coming through that long journey. So as a quantum dark arts defense teacher, I train other quantum dark arts defense practitioners on how to master their energy, how to clear intrusive energy, how to handle intrusive energy, and how to really be sovereign over their space. So that is another aspect, yeah, to me.
That's fascinating, and I'm loving your stories. And you know, you and I have some similarities in our backgrounds, our origin stories. So yeah, I can really relate to that, how it can be disruptive when someone else is speaking through you, and you have a partner present.
Yes.
At night, always at night, right?
Always at night when you're feeling you're at your most vulnerable. Yeah.
I you know, I went through my own journey around that, and also I learned some protective techniques through, you know, sort of cosmic synchronicity, as it tends to happen, which I'm so grateful for. And everybody needs to have those boundaries and that protection available. And I always say it's something you need to practice when you're not in the situation, you know, so that when the situation arises, you're prepared. Because it's very difficult when your adrenaline, if you're confronted by, let's say, one of these beings that's maybe not the prettiest one, that could not one of the angelics, but you've got to have some techniques, some boundaries, some tools in your kit ahead of time, so that in the moment you've practiced and you know what to do. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, very important. And I think it's also the piece of why it happens. Like so many different things on the earth plane at the moment, we're really learning we're really starting to bridge now some more of the mainstream approaches to things to the spiritual approaches. So we can see it happening in the health industry, right? There's lots of alternative, like holistic health solutions, which are starting to become more popular, and actually even mainstream are starting to recognize now. And I believe that part of my mission, and the mission that I chose before I came here, was to be a bridge for mental health and spiritual health, right, if you like. So it was, a very deep journey for me to go on, as I've described, to really to accept the reality that I was experiencing. So and like I say, for many years, there was reductive labels that I was given by mainstream, which it's fine. I understand why that happened. But I believe it's way showers like yourself, like me, like other people, right, who are really starting to bring these messages now into society that, hey guys, there is a multidimensional reality that exists. If you're having like supernatural experiences, or if you're having these kind of strange occurrences happen, then again, start to trust that something that you're experiencing is actually going on. That may not be an explanation yet in mainstream, but it doesn't mean that you're crazy. And it doesn't mean that you need to spend many years, like many of us have done, right, denying your reality, suppressing your reality, or not having solutions to it. So I feel really passionately called. I mean, in terms of what I do in the world, probably like empowering other people around energy mastery is one of my absolute callings and passions, because I really get the trauma that this stuff can bring up, and I really get how lonely it can feel when you don't have answers, or if you don't have support around that. And there's many people, and I've seen it because I've been in like lots and lots of addiction recovery rooms. There's many high frequency, very spiritual people who are in those rooms, who don't realize that actually they're spiritual, that they're high frequency souls. And sometimes like they're drinking as much as they're drinking, and they're having the problems that they're having because there is a reality which is called attachments, and sometimes they're acting in ways, and I've seen it so many times with other people as well, even people in my family who are empaths, right? And they're picking up energy that doesn't belong to them. And it might not be like entities, right? It could just be that you're going into an old building, for example, and there's some sort of trauma, or there's some sort of energy that's in that building which is of a low vibration, and as an empath you're picking that up. And then when you've got some energy which is attached to you, which is of a lower vibration than you are, then it will start affecting your thoughts and your actions and the way that you feel, right? And for many years, I felt completely out of control with all of this, completely out of control. And it's like, what is wrong with me? Like, I just can't balance my emotions, and I'm having these crazy thoughts and these disturbing dreams, and like there must be something terribly wrong with me here. And it's like, yes, you're a highly sensitive soul, right? You're an empath, and you're picking up energy that doesn't belong to you, and it's affecting you. And the great news is you can clear that. And the great news is you can be sovereign over your energy and learn how to protect yourself, so that you're either not picking up energy that doesn't belong to you at all anymore, or if you do, you know that you have and you can clear it quickly. You know, I mean, it is absolutely learning about energy management and protection. I'm not sure I would be here anymore if I hadn't mastered that piece. I'm really not. So I feel very passionate about it, and you're probably the same, right?
Yeah, it's so important. And I know we've all seen those people on the street who are muttering and pointing at, you know, something we can't see. And I think as a channel, as an open spiritual channel, and not knowing, you know, it can be very scary when these things, especially, you know, now with the energy accelerating, people are opening, people are awakening, people are getting messages and downloads and hearing voices and all these things. And everybody, you know, that's new to that and doesn't have a technique to deal with it, naturally your mind's going to go to, what, I don't want to turn into that. Like, how do I know where the line is between me and, you know, this other reality that might take me over? And where, you know, that fear of losing control and not knowing, you know, your boundaries and being sovereign, and all of that is so important to be able to manage that. And, you know, I myself have had those moments where I get a new, let's say a new gift opens up, and then it's like, you know, how far do I want to go with this? And the fear is, if I lean too far into it, will I be able to come back? Who will I be? You know, how will I define myself? What might happen here? Will I even come back to this reality? You know, and that can be terrifying. As you mentioned the word terrifying in the beginning. I know that fear and trust keeps coming up. And I appreciate that so much, that you keep bringing up trust, as other speakers will throughout this summit, how we get to anchor into trusting the divine within and trusting ourselves more and more, and how that opens the door to the balance, the harmonizing of the light and shadow, to embody our mystical power and purpose, the whole topic.
Totally. Yeah. What I'd love to do, if it's okay with you, I would love to share an example of the soul blueprint with your viewers.
Absolutely. Yes. I'd love that.
Because I think it's a good time, and I think it's a good example around why some of us create these realities that we do. Because I'm aware that not everybody's had the same experiences that you've had, that I've had with these other beings, and that's because they haven't chose them, right? That's because they've not chose those types of experiences to evolve from. But everybody, you know, we choose certain experiences before we come here. Like we choose a certain life path before we come here. We certainly always have free will whilst we're here, but there are certain things that we've chosen as part of our soul plan for our lives before we come here that really do play out. So I'd love to share an example of the soul purpose system that I work with, this ancient Hebrew system. Oh, could you just give me screen sharing access, and then I'll share my screen quickly.
Hold on, do I go to, hold on.
There should be a button by share screen. If you click on the little arrow, then you can just click on the multiple.
I think I got it. Did that work?
Let's try. Yeah, perfect. So what I actually did here, and I'll explain this in a moment, because this is a key thing that your audience are going to want to know so that they can understand themselves and really step into their ascension journeys. This is actually an example of the great Whitney Houston. Okay, so this is Whitney Houston's soul blueprint, which I'll explain in just a moment. But how this system works, it's a sacred form of spiritual numerology. The premise is that the sound of your name is creating your reality. Yeah, the sound of your name is creating your reality. So the reason that is your name, as well as your birth date, your place of birth, your time of birth, is one of your unique identifiers. your unique identifiers. I like to think of it as it's like where you're plugged in the matrix. Yeah. So, and I can see I'm going a bit slow, right? I can see that on camera, but hopefully your audience can still follow along just by hearing my voice if there is any interruption on the video here, because this is really important. You're going to want to know this, and I'm actually going to give you access so that your audience can download their profile as well. So how this system works is it decodes your name into Hebrew phonetic sounds. So there are 22 Hebrew letters in the Hebrew alphabet, Hebrew being one of the sacred languages of light. And according to a very, very ancient text, far more ancient than the Bible, 5,000-year-old text called the Sefer Yetzirah, otherwise known as the Book of Creation, it was these Hebrew letters that are actually responsible for creating our entire material reality. Okay, so I call each one of these 22 letters creation codes. And these creation codes are literally encoded into our DNA. They are responsible for driving our attractive field, and they are responsible for creating the experiences that we have in our lives. So this profile, and everybody's profile will look very similar to this. It's a Star of David, or it's a two-dimensional Merkaba, right? If you have a short name, what is considered to be a short name, then you'll just see a triangle. But most of the time, for most people, it's going to look like this Star of David. And it tells us a lot about how you've created your reality, why you're experiencing your reality the way that you are. It tells us the karma, or the challenges that you've come, the shadow, we could call it, that you've come into this life in order to transmute into your greatest gifts of gold. It tells us what the talents are that you've given yourself at soul level, that you're here to lead with in life. And it tells us what your goals are, right? Who you've come here to be, what you've come here to do. And then in the middle here, you see this soul destiny code, okay? And your soul destiny code is very, very important. It's quintessentially who you are at your core. It's the journey that you're on your whole life, and you're here to fully embody those codes in your soul destiny. So really, it's the answer to the big question, why you're here. The downwards pointing triangle is the coding that drives your experiences in your earlier life. So normally between the ages of around 0 to 35. Then the upwards pointing triangle is really the coding that contains your higher purpose. And this coding in the upwards pointing triangle generally comes online it starts bleeding in your late teenage years. Then there's a transition that happens between, normally, depending on your astrology, 35 to 42, often called in our society the midlife crisis. But when you see it through the eyes of evolution, you see that it's actually your midlife transition. And often at this point, you're releasing a lot of the choices that you may be made in your earlier life, which lack meaning for you now. Okay, so and as I say, in the middle here you have soul destiny. So Whitney Houston, her profile I think is super fascinating. Obviously an amazing lady with many talents. Now Whitney has in physical challenges this 8-8. Okay, this 8-8 will have caused Whitney a lot of problems. I have a 17-8 in that position, but the eights actually struggle to be here. Okay, they're high frequency souls. So Whitney was a very high frequency soul who will have struggled to have the human experience. She would have struggled with her emotions. She certainly would have wanted to escape her emotions. And often the eights in this position, as by way of escaping their experience, it can lead them into addictions, right? Because they're trying to get out of here. Okay, so Whitney's got a few of these similar types of coding in her profile. The 12 threes that she has in physical goals. Well, firstly, this is why Whitney is such a phenomenal singer, because the 3 codes is the performance code. They're often singers. They love to sing. So you can see this was a big drive, because whatever you have in your goal position is a drive for you. So this would have been an earlier life drive, like to be a singer, to be a performer. Of course, she was an incredible actress as well. Unfortunately, that 12-3 energy is also what I call, it's like the rock and roll code, right? It's the code of excess. Okay, so, and often, you know, the 12-3s, part of the excess can be drink, drug, rock and roll, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, basically. So that, in conjunction with the 8s, would have been creating, again, this desire for excess and to get out of here. Plus, in addition to that, her dominant vibration is the 6s. The 6s can often, and particularly, so dominant vibration, I should explain, is when you have 4 or more of the same number or code in your profile. So you can see here, Whitney Houston, a 6-6 in spiritual goals, a 6-6 in soul destiny. Now, the 6s are incredible creative beings, incredible creative beings. They can take a thought, they can take a download or a concept, and they're really good at bringing that idea all the way into the physical reality and manifesting it. The people who have the 6s in their profiles, like Whitney does, particularly as her soul destiny, she is here to be a creative channel for the divine to manifest through. However, when you have a dominant vibration, it's very, very common that you would be experiencing the extremes of that coding. So, like, you know, Whitney would have had access to the talents of this. I mean, she was an incredible creative being. She was also a channel, because she's got the 9-9 in spiritual talents, who are the channels. So that's why she was such an incredible songwriter as well. So yeah, amazing creative being. But the 6s in a challenge position often manifest addictions, and particularly when you have it as a dominant vibration. And when you have a 6 as a dominant vibration, which is why many 6s end up in like AA or recovery rooms, it's because the only way that you can get through that addiction is by finding your own interpretation of God or a higher power. So there are many 6s, and many spiritual beings choose the initiation of addiction in order to find their way back to God, or to return to source, if you like. So it is obviously just a huge shame that that Whitney's no longer with us. The chances are as well, when you look at particularly the physical challenges and spiritual challenges, they give a big indication of the karmic programming, like the karma that you've come here to clear, and it gives you an insight into their past life. What I can see from Whitney's profile is she was extremely high frequency, probably a star seed, yeah, very, very highly evolved, was struggling to be on Earth, was wanting to escape her fame and like all of the pressure that was coming from that. More than likely, Whitney actually probably committed suicide, looking at her profile in a previous life. She has karma around being on the earth plane. So she set herself some big challenges with her profile of being here, but she's also got these incredible gifts. So like this work, the soul blueprint work, the soul profile, I just think is, for me, there's many different systems out there, but it's the system that I love the most. You know, when I first connected with it, it was just so transformational for me to understand what my soul story was and why I'd experienced the reality that I had. It also gives you such deep illumination on what your gifts are, what your goals are, what your highest soul destiny is. So, I mean, I'm going to stop sharing because I can see the video is a little bit interrupted.
I just appreciate who you are and what you're doing so much, Ariella. Thank you for all you're sharing with us.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for creating this beautiful summit. Thank you as well for, I understand the journey, so I honor your journey as well of really stepping into who you know that you've come here to be, and walking past all of the initiations around that. So yeah, just thank you so much for your invitation. I've loved opening this up. Thank you to all of your beautiful audience who have tuned into this. And you know, really looking forwards. I know that you're a catalyst, I know that you're a channel, and I really believe that this summit will be an incredible awakener and catalyst for many people. So, you know, really pleased and honored to be a part of this.
Wonderful. It's certainly my pleasure to offer this work to everyone. I appreciate everything you've shared. And to everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. Follow those links, grab the free gifts, and I'd love to hear about your experiences. And wherever you are, just know that we're all in this journey together. You are not doing your ascension work and your spiritual work alone. And all of the work that you do is for a higher purpose. Thank you all, and namaste.
Thank you.